Hey guys, it's Michelle. This is take 2 of episode 9 of the Women Entrepreneurs Success Show, which is brought to you by Women Who Wow, the premier coaching and mentoring platform for the seriously driven women entrepreneurs. So if that's you, then definitely message me n.me/Women Who Wow and ask me about Women Who Wow. But today's episode is all about a judgment and criticism success plan, or survival plan, actually. I think that women entrepreneurs probably need this more than male entrepreneurs, and dare I say it, more than other women, frankly. And so I am really excited to come to you guys with this, just some real talk about the judgment and criticism we face as women entrepreneurs and how to survive it and how to actually thrive on it. But before I get started on exactly what a survival plan looks like regarding judgment and criticism, I do want to highlight one of our members. Today, I want to highlight Brenda Mason of Tiny Living Huge Life, I believe is her website. Oh, smallerlivingHugeLife.com. Brenda Mason is the Marie Kondo for those of us who want serious results really fast in a really practical way. It's not that I didn't love the art of tidying up, but Brenda Mason actually has a very unique story. She downsized her house from a 3,100 square foot house down to 310 square feet in 31 days. And what she learned in that process is so practical and such a practical help for us that she's definitely worth checking out. She's actually going to be speaking near me in the Outer Banks coming in June or July. And anyway, you can check her out at smallerlivingHugeLife.com. I'm super excited to have Brenda as part of us. And I am really excited about jumping like headfirst into this judgment and criticism survival plan. The truth is, judgment and criticism, like, it happens, right? I get really frustrated by it. I try not to judge other people for their beliefs or their, any number of things that I feel like the judgment, cloud is getting really, really big these days. And I just feel like we were moving in the opposite direction. And now it's almost like we've become more judgmental and more criticizing of anyone who is different than us. And I really, really hate to see it. But the truth is, criticism and judgment has been something we have always had to deal with, right? As women, as people, as mothers, as daughters, as friends, and certainly as entrepreneurs. It's always happened. I remember in the early days of my business, I think people felt sorry for me, so they wouldn't have come up and judged me or criticized me for like what I wasn't doing. But the bills did that for them, right? Like the bills came in and sort of like mocked me every month. They came in like, you're making too little, you're not doing enough. Like, when are you going to figure this out? So even when people weren't judging or criticizing me, like the monthly bills came in and I felt like, oh, it was like such a heavy burden to bear, because when I looked at those numbers and looked at what was in my account, I mean, it was, I felt judged as not making enough, and that was probably a very accurate judgment. But also the judgment it's always there. It also comes later, right? I've been judged ironically by people who are lying about where their money comes from, right? Or how much money they have. And so I've been judged for my management of money. I have been judged for, my hair being too long. I've been judged for, the way I raise my kids or what I allow them to do or don't allow them to do. The judgment just comes from all different sides. And I do have sort of a 5-step little plan for a judgment detox, but also for just surviving it to where you can use it to grow. And there's a meme or something out there about like taking bricks thrown at you and then and putting them on the ground so you can like just keep climbing on them. And that's really what we can do with the judgment and criticism. The first thing I want to say is that a lot of authors, when I read about success and business and entrepreneurship, sometimes they do cover things about judgment and criticism. But they're wrong, right? They say that it comes more as you get more successful, right? Like you can expect it, that it is a sign of success. I can attest to the fact it can also be a sign of failure. It's not really a sign of success or failure. It's just a sign of humanity, right? It's just where we live, right? So the better truth, I guess, is the higher up you go in business or life or whatever, the more distant the judgment becomes, because you're never judged by people who are scaling the wall with you. You are never judged by people who are hustling by your side. You're never criticized by the people who are focusing on their own goals and hustling towards them. That's not who gives judgment. The people who are giving judgment are the ones who are not on your same path, right? So it's always there, but the further up you go, the more distant the sound, the more distant the chatter is of criticism and judgment. And I find that to be a kind of a good thing. So here's the survival plan. Before I get into the 5 steps, the first thing, I guess, it's not even in my notes, but the first thing I want to say is, judge not, right? If you don't want to be judged and criticized, then stop judging other people, stop criticizing other people, right? It's just kind of a treat others the way you want to be treated. I really try always to be very slow to judge, because I don't want to be judged. It doesn't feel amazing. I don't love that. So, that's like, I guess, step A or step 0.5 is judge less and you will be judged less, right? Judge less and you will be judged less, or you'll hear the judgment less, right? So that's the step 0.5. So step 1 is know the language of judgment and criticism. Know the language of judgment and criticism. Here's the thing. Your soul knows. Your soul knows because you feel it, right? The language might be, don't you ever just take a break? Slow down, right? Slow down and smell the roses if they're judging you or criticizing you for working too much or being too driven or whatever. I remember, I probably shouldn't even say this. This is a public live stream, but I'm going to say it anyway. I remember parts of my family that I married into, they would say things, I quit my job, right, pretty close after getting married because we had kids, and this was something very new to them. And I think that the story was that maybe I was lazy. I'm not sure. But I constantly heard words like, you should try to do X. Like, that's a really cushy job. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I'm not looking for a cushy job, right? And I didn't even understand where that came from, right? But from their perspective, 20 years later, I can see, like, here I was, like, quitting my job and not really having a plan. And, my plan was hustle. But know the language of criticism and judgment. I want you to recognize it simply because your soul recognizes it. It feels the judgment. And when you dismiss that judgment as, they didn't mean it or whatever, then there's a disconnect between what your soul knows to be true and what you're justifying. Also, when you're justifying judgment and criticism, you tend to take it on a little bit more personally. And so I encourage you to know the language of judgment and criticism, to recognize it for what it is. You don't have to call it out every time. That's not really useful, but you do want to recognize it for what it is. I don't know if any of you guys watch The Bachelor. This is something I do with Shelby, who's my middle daughter. And, judge me if you want, but it is my guilty pleasure. I love watching this with her, and she has a friend over who comes and does it with us. And, but one of the things that happened last night, there's a girl named Demi who, I quite like, and she, is 23, and a couple of the older, bachelorettes were saying things like, well, when I was younger, I thought this too. And when I was whatever, and Demi calls it out every time. She's like, listen, I hear what you're saying, and I want you to know I hear it, right? In other words, that slick little way you tried to, like, put doubt in my mind or judge or criticize me, I recognize the language of that. So the first step of the survival plan is to know the language of judgment and criticism. You just want to acknowledge it so your soul doesn't get confused, right? So your inner being isn't like, well, did they really mean that? Yeah, they meant it. It might have even come from an amazing place. It comes from a place where they feel like they are doing or have done better than you, but it still might come out of a place of tremendous, authentic concern for you. You just want to know the language of judgment and criticism. The second thing, which really matters, is you got to know the motive of judgment and criticism. Not always is it to tear you down. A lot of times that the motive of judgment or criticism, it can be from a good place. It can be out of absolute concern for you. I remember hearing Grant Cardone talk about how, everyone in his life was like, slow down, bud, slow down, smell the roses, take some time off. Do you ever rest? How much are you sleeping? Like that kind of stuff came from tremendously honorable motives, right? But also, There can be motives of wanting to feel superior, motives of feeling left out or left behind, motives of envy. It can, but you just want to be aware not only of the language so that you recognize it and honor how you're feeling when it happens, but also know the motives. At least try to ascertain. And I encourage you not to always assess a negative motive to people who have judgment or judging or criticizing you. Sometimes it can be exactly the opposite. And so I encourage you to pay attention to the motives, but don't always assess it as some massively negative motive. It can be from a very authentic place. So know the language, know the motives. Then it gets fun, the survival plan. You want to know where you are going, right? You want to be so magnetized to your future that you are literally being pulled into it, that your gaze is focused, right? So after you kind of recognize the language and you consider the motive of the judgment or criticism, you want to remember where you are heading, where you are going in your business and in your life, with your health, with your marriage, with your family. You want to be magnetized into your future. So that's why I journal every single day. I write it out every single day. No judgment about the judge. Oh, that's great, Michelle Snelling. That is really amazing. Having no judgment about the judgment. Absolutely. Right? Like just kind of letting that go, letting the motives, like being aware of that, but not assessing like a negative judgment on the motives. I love that. No judgment about the judgment. So you want to know where you're going. You want to be magnetized into your future, really pulled in to where the stuff that is the judgment or criticism kind of is in the background of your life, right? It's kind of like just kind of falls to the wayside. It becomes like mindless chatter after a while. And that's what I mean, that the further up you go, the more distant the sounds of the criticism, because it's kind of like you're just so focused on where you're growing, where you're going. The fourth, I guess, step is to know and grow yourself, right? So I always want to, regardless of motive, I always want to ask, is there anything I need to do or learn from this, right? Like to me, it's like everything is happening for me. I do not want to miss an opportunity to grow. And so even if once I know the language and I'm like thinking, considering the motive, I'm focusing on where I'm going, but I don't want to miss an opportunity to grow. I want to consider, especially if I'm hearing the same consistent, feedback, criticism, judgment, I want to pay attention to it. Is there something I need to do or learn here, right? Frankly, one of the most consistent criticisms or judgments I received from probably college on, at least college on, was I didn't manage my money well, right? And so while that was definitely a judgment, sometimes it came from impure motives, I think. But the truth is there was something I needed to do and learn from that. It's why I joined Denise Hughes's Women Talking Finances Club. I do need to look at how I managed my money. That's something I desperately needed. I knew it when she was first writing that book because I made way too much money for what I was showing. And so it was just, anyway, you want to look and see, is there anything I need to do or learn based on this? And finally, the fifth step is really let it go, right? Literally like drop it like a bag. If you were climbing the highest peak of a mountain and you know that something's weighing you down, you just drop it, just cut it loose and just keep climbing. So that is the 5-step survival plan for judgment and criticism. And I am super excited to have you guys here. Michelle Snelling, I love that quote, no judgment about the judgment. That is ultimate freedom. Right? Ultimate freedom, I think, to not feel the need to judge other people and to not also feel the need to judge when they judge you. And but it's just part of it. It's just part of being on planet Earth. It's part of our existence. And as a woman entrepreneur, we are doing different things, right? We are getting attention. I've heard people say that judgment and criticism is, just the second, just something that happens when you get attention. It's like, no, it's just something that happens when you're human, right? It's just something that happens when you're human. But letting it go in this way, learning from it, allowing yourself to be pulled in by your vision so that everything else becomes secondary. But I do think that it's important to know the language of judgment and criticism so that you honor how you feel when you see it. I feel like where alignment comes from is being able to honor how we're feeling inside, regardless of the rationale or the, whatever that other people might give. We just want to know what we heard heard, right? Yes, it's a form of shoulding. Shoulding all over yourself. Should is the ultimate demoralizer. I learned that from Steve Chandler, and he said even when you say the word should, it's like a should. Like, hey, did you go to the gym? No, I know I should. So audibly, it kind of goes down. It just is a mood tanker, right? So it just takes you down. So no more shoulding all over ourselves. Thank you guys for being here live with me. I am loving the Women Entrepreneur Success Show. This is episode 9. And I also am loving the Coaching from the Couch sessions, which I'm doing on the same Facebook page every day. I'm not really sure of the time. And we're gonna stay with that because I'm really enjoying it. I would love for it to be an ongoing conversation with you guys. So if you have a question about business, marketing, branding, packaging, selling, definitely reach out to me, m.me/womenwhowow, or you can put a comment in these comments below. And if you're not a woman entrepreneur, or a Women Who Wow members, but you are a woman entrepreneur, then definitely reach out to me so we can rectify that situation. All right, guys, I'll talk with you soon. Brenda Mason, please make sure you listen to the very first part of this video. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.